welcome to another episode of Crush This, a Monster Truck Podcast. Actually, let me correct this. This is the first episode of our new segment called Kickin' It Old School. So this is a Crush This, a Monster Truck Podcast, Kickin' It Old School. I may shorten that up a little bit, but this is presented by High Octane Coffee and J Concepts. Once again, we normally would have our normal group of people, Jason and Brad and I here. Jason's actually heading to Virginia for a national event, and Brad's actually doing some music stuff with the band that he's part of. So it's right now me and Josh. So, Josh, how you doing right now?
I am good, sir. I'm good. I actually just got in from work. Had a nice little rain shower to cool my ass off before I came inside, so I'm enjoying my chair right now and hanging out with two of you guys.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that with our guests, we're going to try to transition on to what he does. And speaking of which, we do have a lot of RC followers, and you're doing a new project, which is pretty cool. Pretty much, I'm gonna you've been posting pictures of it anyway. You're recreating the Gravedigger 7 truck that's been popular since '92 all the way to the early 2000s. If you want to talk about that for a little bit, I mean, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I can. Jacob Smallwood actually took the design off of an off comment that I made to him on Facebook. He says, I could probably do that. And I said, dude, if you could, I would, like, bow at your feet and be like, thank you, sir, so much. And within, like, a day or two, he sent me design photos of it. And before I knew it, it was a real thing. I just got the chassis in the mail the other day. I put it all together. It's on its first mock-up right now. It's coming along fairly good. I did have a Digger 7 tube chassis a long time ago that was a Clodbuster-based truck, and I fell on some hard times. I had to sell it, needed the money more than I needed the chassis. I wished I never sold it because I loved that truck. I love that chassis. And for Jake to do that meant a whole lot to me. And when that truck's done, it's going to be out there on Trigger King, probably beating Snakebite in Sport Mod.
Yeah, speaking about Snakebite, this guy that we're going to introduce here has been all across the map. He owned his own truck. He raced for basically the best team in the nation. He has, driven more than a fair share of trucks, but he also is still in today's industry, just on a smaller scale, really kicking some butt in the Trigger King and RC racing, but he also makes some awesome, cool Mustangs, which we'll talk about later on in the topic. But he's one half of the Childress brothers. This is Lonnie Childress. How you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. You're not intimidated having Josh on the other line since you guys see each other a lot.
Yeah, I see him a lot. And unfortunately, I see the tailgate of his truck more often than he sees the tailgate of mine. So, but I would challenge him to, climb in a real truck and let's see how we do against each other.
Like I said, find me the truck. We'll go.
You know enough people in the industry. You can bump one.
Heck, Josh, there's a truck.
I'll tell you what. I'll borrow one of Zimmer's trucks if you drive Bigfoot 4.
You go ahead, Josh, because you go ahead, Josh, because by the time you run Zimmer's trucks that are the old SIR ones, before you even hit the gas, they probably fall apart.
Hey, that's not nice, Dan.
It's the truth.
Not nice at all.
Now, if we had this conversation back in 2012,
if
we had this conversation back in 2012, it'd be a whole different ballgame. Right now,
I'm sure I could get one from Jimmy Cretin.
Hey, I'll take it.
Heck, why don't you just ask Denver?
I want it chopped all the way down.
Yeah. I'll challenge both of you guys with that chopped one if Jimmy lets me put an awesome Kong body on it. I would take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see what they want to do.
This is true.
Yeah, but anyway.
Back on a serious note, one thing I've always kind of wanted to ask you, Lonnie, is you ran. There's a couple videos on YouTube of the Virginia Beach shows, the Thunder on the Beach shows, where you're just flat spanking everybody. What was it about that sandy track that you like so much?
Man, it was just it was long. The ramps were awesome, and I don't know, it just seemed to suit my driving style. And you know, the Bigfoot trucks, they were you know, we really kind of set those trucks up around the Penda series, and that Thunder on the Beach back then, when I did 1 and 2, were pretty close to that type of Penda track. And the trucks just worked phenomenal. I mean, they were awesome. And anytime you can just, you know, peg the thing to the floor and never lift, you know, the Bigfoot trucks were just phenomenal at that.
I always thought that was pretty cool watching the stories, and also there was a story behind. I guess one side of the track was actually pretty bad compared to the other one.
Well, that was the second year we were there. The first year was perfect. Both days were perfect. I made it to the finals both days. One day it was Tom and I in the finals, and it was a really, really close race. They gave the win to Tom. I don't know. It was pretty close. So the angle of the video that's on YouTube is really hard to tell, but it was super, super close. And then I believe the other day it was Dennis and I in the finals, and I did end up taking the win that day. Then when we went for Thunder on the Beach 2, I think it was the first day, if I remember correctly, I went to the finals again. I honestly don't remember who I was running. It was probably Dennis, and I beat him again. The next day, though, I believe, all night long, and there was a huge water hole in front of the first stack of cars on the right-hand lane, and the left-hand lane was perfect. Well, you know, this pond that was in the first ramp was as long as the dang truck. So obviously when you go through 6 inches of water, it's going to slow you down. There was not one winner that came from that lane. I happened to get put in that lane on the first on the first round. We got taken out first round. Then they corrected the problem for second round. I was pretty upset that day that they didn't go ahead and run round 1 again, which really they should have, and I think we would have seen a completely different outcome in the end. But the town was phenomenal. They gave us monster truck drivers the run of the boardwalk. We were go-kart racing and riding roller coasters, and you name it. They put the red carpet out for us. And Wildwood, New Jersey was an amazing town to have, you know, to have us all out there and running on the beach, and it was just phenomenal. And I would you know, just like to say thank you if anybody from those days, you know, organizing that event or listening to this. It was a phenomenal time.
Those shows just look like so much fun. I've always wanted to go out to one of those Thunder on the Beach events. The one thing I remember though about I did a video a while back, Bigfoot versus Gravedigger. I put it up on my YouTube page of just all the races those trucks competed in, and I just happened to stumble across those beach videos of you spanking Dennis. One of those days, I want to say the second year, Dennis was in the finals the first day with Gravedigger 7, and the next day he didn't like, he didn't like how 7 was handling or something, so he swapped over to Digger 3 to try to beat you, and he lost.
Yeah.
Both days with both different trucks.
I remember that. That was crazy. I don't know if it was he didn't like the way it was handling or something went away on it. But either way, yeah, we took him out both times, which is, you know, there were a couple of guys that anytime I pulled to the line, and it was my, you know, I put all my effort into beating them. One of them was Dennis. The other one was Gary Porter. Both phenomenal guys, great guys. But, you know, if you can beat, in my opinion, if you could take out those two guys, I think they were two of the best in the business.
Now let's go back and talk about when you first started. I know you actually ran with Rob Fuchs for a while in the First Blood truck. Was that the first truck you got your hands on, or was it the Missouri Wild thing?
No, we actually, my brother Jason and I have, in our entire lives, have paid to see one monster truck show. I was working in Columbia, Missouri at a Walmart store, and they had a monster truck show come into town. It was actually a Neil Darnell show. So we paid to go to that show, and, during the introductions, I remember it was Freddie Schaefer with Barefoot, Crimson Crusher. Dale was there with Crimson Crusher, still had the twin tractor tires on it. Jimmy was there with Barbarian. Rob was there with First Blood. I think the Breen, I know the Breen boys were there, and Larry Garvel with Texas was there. I know I'm sorry, not Texas Toy, but Texas Stomper, the red Chevy short bed truck. Renegade was there. I'm sure I'm probably missing a couple of trucks, but those are the main ones that I could remember. And so anyway, when they all came out for introductions, of course, red's my favorite color, and I'm a Ford guy. Everybody knows that. And so, Jason and I got behind Rob and rooted him on. He ended up winning the first night, but busted a wheel off. And at the end of the show, they let us all come down into the pits and meet the drivers and all that, which we thought was really cool. And for whatever reason, I said, hey, man, you guys, are you here by yourself? Do you have somebody to help you put this truck back together? And I knew what to do with a monster truck at this point, right? He's like, no, man, I don't have anybody with me. If you guys want to come back tomorrow, I'll get you some T-shirts and get you into the show. So we did. We showed up the next day, and from then on, anytime Rob was in the area or anywhere we could get to go see him and help him out, we did. And several years down the road, Rob had gotten married and was having, I believe, his second child, and he actually had a full-time job as well as running the monster truck. And so I get a call out of the blue one day. I'm booked to run the New York Mini Series, which the year prior was actually a point series for TNT, but became a USHRA
in '91.
And it was purse money, so you got paid by how you qualified and how many rounds you went. So anyway, Rob said, I'm booked for this, but we could be having the baby any time during that time, so I can't really go run the truck. Do you think you could? My jaw hit the floor, and I went, well. So I agreed to do it. Got in a huge argument with my dad because he said, well, what the hell makes you think you can do it? And I said, well, if I don't, I will never forgive myself for not at least trying. So that's what we did, man. Went out. He went with me to the very first event, which I believe was Weed Sport New York. I didn't quite last, so I was pretty impressed with that. The very first person that I ever raced was David Morris in Equalizer, and it was his first time back in the Equalizer. He kicked my butt, and I was scared to death, not knowing what the hell I was doing. But for that, Rob sent me back out to finish up the series, and said just hang out with Fred Schaefer and Ray Perkowski, and those guys know what's going on, and they'll help you out, and they'll get you through this. So that's what we did, and kind of got a taste for it. And when I got back home, I told Jason, I was like, man, we got to figure out a way to do this, because this is just it's just cool. And through talking with Ray Perkowski, he kind of put us in touch with Hornus, who owned Missouri Wild Thing at the time. And so I got a hold of Warren, and he said, yeah, I'm kind of looking for a driver. He said, I kind of got a guy that's driving now, but he's not really all in it, and he's only can't do all the events that I want to do. And so we shared the seat for a couple of weeks, and then basically turned it over to me. And the truck was pretty behind the times, but we were having some issues with it, and nobody was in full, all the time with the truck that needed to be spent with it. He didn't really have a hauler. We were renting a U-Haul van and pulling it on a car trailer and going through tires left and right. So finally I said, hey man, what would you think about selling this truck to my brother and me? And we don't really have a lot of money, but we'll make payments on it or whatever. So we had actually we'd restored a 68 Mustang coupe, and his daughter really liked that, so we gave him the coupe as the down payment, and made payments as we went. And, we campaigned that truck for a couple of years, took it from a truck that almost couldn't finish a show to a truck that was winning events. So we did a lot of shows with Ed Beckley and Rev and some of those other guys. And the thing was just the camaraderie of all the other teams and all the we made some really, really good friends, and everybody helped each other out, and that's what it was all about back then. And so we got hooked up with Pablo Huffaker during all this time, and actually he was needing some shows, and we said, well, hey, we're doing these shows, and so we got him a couple of dates, and then he ended up putting together some dates with Neil Darnell and suggested that we run. So Neil hired us as well, and about this time, Neil said, I've been trying to get Dennis to come on this deal with the digger truck, but he doesn't have anything available. And so Pablo made a phone call to Dennis and said, hey, what if I was to put a digger truck on my mainstay Custer truck chassis and run it as Gravedigger for these shows? And so they made a deal, and then Pablo called Neil and said, hey, we can do this. I'll be a digger, and by the way, could you use my old leaf spring truck, the old show and off truck? And Neil said, sure. You got somebody driving? He's like, oh yeah, I'll get Jason Childress to drive that truck for you. And he's like, has he ever driven a truck? Oh, sure he has. Well, Jason hadn't driven anything, other than moving our truck in and out of the trailer. I drove our truck, and Jason crewed, and so that's how he first ended up in the seat. And it was a really fun time doing all that stuff. And obviously we all know that Pablo ended up staying in digger till just a few years ago, and made a hell of a career out of it. But along the way, we decided we needed to build a new truck, and so basically what we ended up agreeing to was Jason would drive the mainstay truck and transport it, and we wouldn't take any money from Pablo, but he would help us build our new chassis. And along this time was when Bigfoot was working with Trailmaster Trailmaster was supposed to take over building their shocks, the shocks that everybody runs today. They were supposed to take over manufacturing those and actually sell to other teams. Well, so the story goes is the only set of those that ever got sold was to Donnie Van Loo, and somebody inside, to my understanding, somebody inside of Trailmaster was friends with Steve Combs and kind of backdoored one of those shocks to Steve, and we all know where that led to. But I was convinced that Bigfoot was the best truck and landed the best and worked the best, and I didn't want to build a new truck unless we could have those shocks on it. So as we were actually picking up the body for the new chassis to send to Pablo so he could start working on the cage, I said, hey, let's run up to Bigfoot and find out when those shocks are going to be available. So with the new body in tow, we pulled in the Bigfoot parking lot, and Jim Kramer came out and started talking to us, and we were asking about the shocks and this and that. One thing led to another, and he said, well, why do you guys want to build a new chassis? And I said, well, if we want to get competitive and be better and just keep up with the Joneses, we really need a new piece, and we need to lighten things up and just we want to be better. And so he said, well, what if you guys just came to work for us? And we kind of both looked at him and said, both of us? And he said, well, yeah, I can't take one without the other. I mean, I can't split the team up. And so basically we called him a couple days later and said, yeah, we're very interested. And it was kind of tough to leave our own team, especially with having a new truck in the works. But I think in the long run, it was probably the best thing for us. It took a lot of pressure off of us as far as, if we blow an engine up or something like that, how are we going to replace it? Because we were on a shoestring budget, and I got a lot of grief from some of the people saying, man, why are you going to work for those guys? And I'm like, because it's like running Saturday night dirt track at the local stock car track, and having Richard Petty come say, "Hey, you want to go run NASCAR with me?" Well, yeah, I did. So, got to be, in my opinion, especially at that time, drive the best equipment that was on the planet. I didn't have to worry about if something broke. I knew that, there was money to fix it. If we blew an engine up, it wasn't a big deal. They'll send me a new one or put a new one in when I get back to the shop, and had a whole group of guys back at the shop that specialized in different areas of the truck and just made sure that piece was 100% every time we went out. I became so much better of a driver just because my confidence level went through the roof, because I knew that I wasn't the guy that had to pay for it if it got crashed or if it got blown up or whatever, and it just made all the difference in the world.
I'm kind of glad you made the NASCAR comparison, because I was about to go there myself and say that'd be like Richard Petty doing or not Richard Petty, I'm sorry, Richard Childress doing what he did with Clint Boyer a while back. Boyer was a star on the dirt tracks and got hired into NASCAR. You're a Ford guy. You're a Ford guy, and the best Ford team in monster trucks just says, "Hey, by the way, you want to come work for us?" That's almost like a no-brainer in my book to want to go work for Bigfoot.
Exactly. One of the guys that gave me the most crap was, and love the guy to death, was Eric Nigger. He's like, man, it just blows my mind why you would leave your own team to come to work for Bigfoot. And I'm like, dude, no stress here. There is no stress. I've got the best equipment on the planet. I know if something's torn up, it's going to get fixed, and I'll be able to go race again next weekend.
You don't have to worry about the financials anymore. You're a driver and a crew.
Exactly. I know I'm getting a paycheck every week. I don't have to deal with trying to book the truck. I don't have to, deal with taking care of the semi and making sure that's, if there's something wrong with that, you got to pay for all that. I mean, it's a lot to be an independent. Even back then was a lot. I mean, just as by comparison, we were making like $1,500 a weekend at that time. And when I went to work for Bigfoot, some of those weekends they were making, $5,000-$6,000 on the contract plus the novelty money. We were lucky if we made a couple $100 in novelties. They make, several thousand, and sometimes the novelty money would be more than the contract money was.
And that's where the money's at, is selling the T-shirts. Look at Dennis.
Exactly. I had conversations with Dennis before. He'd, go home with $30,000 in novelty sales. That's huge.
For an independent team,
that was because he ran hard. He won. He, did crazy stuff. Tore the truck up a lot, and he had to make that kind of money to be able to put that truck back together. I mean, Dennis, he had a rough go of it, which I think is why he ultimately sold out. He basically did exactly the same thing that I did, and said, "Here, you buy it, you take care of all the financials, you pay me to drive the thing."
And I don't think the term "sold out" as far as that goes. I'd like to.
I don't mean
bought in is what I would say.
I don't mean sold out like sold out to the man. I mean he sold his trucks, but then all that financial worry was off of his shoulders.
Yeah, exactly.
And also
I know.
Okay, I was about to say.
I do know.
Go ahead, Jason.
Lonnie.
Or Lonnie, I'm sorry. Gosh, darn it.
Man, we did. I don't know.
Slap the hell out of you with the next race
anymore, Cheech.
Dang it.
Actually, one of the cool things when I actually stepped out of the driver's seat and took over the body shop was, me and I had a couple of guys that helped me there. One of them was Jay McCardle, who, God rest his soul, we lost him a few years ago, and very unexpectedly. And he and I, and also another guy, Dave, that was from out in Oregon, were my, they helped me in the body shop, and it would be cool. We would be there working late at night, and Bob Chandler would come down and tell us stories. And we heard some pretty cool stories that I don't think a lot of people heard. But one of the things that he told us was that one of his biggest regrets is that Dennis came to him and asked him to buy the truck. And he said, I really should have bought it.
So you're meaning Bob Chandler had the chance to buy Gravedigger?
That's what I'm telling you. Dennis wanted Bob to buy it instead of, I guess at the time would have been Clear Channel.
Wow, never knew that. That's
Yeah.
That's a good tidbit of information. Never knew that at all.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
All right, speaking of your time at Bigfoot here, when you first started at Bigfoot, you drove Bigfoot 4, correct?
Actually, the very first truck that I drove at Bigfoot was number 2.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
number 3, because when we first started there, our very first show was the '93 Jamboree in Indianapolis, and they sent us over to help out with the ride trucks. They had both of them there that year, and it rained the entire weekend.
Sounds about like Indy.
Yeah, we were slinging mud all over people, and it was fun, but I couldn't wait to get in a race truck. But yes, the first competition truck that I drove for them was in Freedom Hall with a snake bite body on number 4. And I believe that I spent about 9 months in that truck.
So you were Colt Cobra for a little bit?
I was Colt Cobra for a little bit.
That's pretty cool. But I was about to say, you guys are one of the very few that actually have worked family-wise with both juggernauts of the industry. You know, I think your brother drove Gravedigger during a time at Clear Channel, and you were the Bigfoot guy, and he worked for Bigfoot. How is it being notified like that? You know, two of the biggest names in the industry. Trust that you and your brother could work on some of the best equipment out there.
Well, I mean, it was a big honor. And even before Jason got to drive Gravedigger, in my opinion, was driving, probably the second best truck in the country at that time was Fred Schaefer's Barefoot trucks.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, he drove Freddie's Barefoot trucks for 3 years, I believe. Huge horsepower in those trucks and the slipper clutches and all that stuff. To still be remembered in this day, in this day and age, both of us, I think that says a lot, and I'm very proud of the accomplishments that both of us made in the industry, and the friendships that we made in the industry. And my biggest regret is that I never got the opportunity to run a point series. I would have loved to have done that.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. I mean, you kind of came along right as TNT was closing down. USHRA had a point series, but that was kind of like for the best of the best kind of deal. That was Dennis and Andy Brass, Fred Schaefer, all those guys running with Taurus and Jackie Woolman Jr. and Sr. and Elvin Depew.
Yep. And that turned into, that series kind of ended up what replaced it was the Penda series.
Yeah.
And I got one opportunity to run one of those races, and it was at the RCA Dome, and I was in number 10 at the time, and I believe, if I remember correctly, Dan was running a USHRA point series because they were still had a point series along with Penda, so they were running simultaneously. And if I remember correctly, they put the Power Wheels body on my truck, and Dan had a Bigfoot body and was running the USHRA event, and I went to the Hoosier Dome. And right before going, John Peterson, who did our shocks and our transmissions at the time, said, I want to put a new transmission in your truck. And I said, I really wish you wouldn't. It's working great. I don't like changing stuff that's working. And he's like, well, I would just feel so much better if I put a fresh piece in your truck. And I'm like, dude, I am begging you, do not touch my truck. It's working beautifully. And so I pulled to the line to make my qualifying pass and you know, did an initial dry hop to feel the track out, rolled up on the cars, and that was it. Broke the transmission, the brand new transmission that I begged him not to put in the truck. So they pulled me off the track, and Eric Meager was there driving 15, and he had, you know, recently gotten out of 10 and into 15. So they, at the time, they had a rule about how many people could work on the truck, and so they said, hey, you just stay out of the way because Eric knows the truck better. We'll put a new transmission in it, and you'll be the last place qualifier, but we'll still get in the show. I said, okay, cool. So they got all this stuff done, putting the transmission back in. I said, did you guys check the input shaft? Because I had no gears at all, and that's usually what happens when you have no gears. And I said, we didn't have time because the torque converters were matched to the flywheels at the time, and none of it was the same between trucks and between. So they said we would have had to change the flywheel and all this stuff. And so sure enough, I got in there, fired it up, still didn't have any gears. End of the day, it was a broken input shaft that they didn't change. And so that was my one and only chance to actually get to run a Penda series for Bigfoot. I did get to run one untelevised Penda show in Springfield, Missouri one year with Wild Thing. And of course, I knew I was going to get my clock cleaned. I was just there as a filler truck because they didn't have enough trucks. And George Carpenter called us and said, hey, you know, I need some trucks. And we said, well, how much money are we going to get paid? And he said, it depends on how many rounds you get. And I said, I have to get at least this much. And he said, I'll give you at least that much. So we went down there, and I ended up running Gene. He was running Snakebite 9 at that point. He took me out first round, which I knew he would. So, but that was fun. But then I actually, Dave Byers and myself spent a lot of time running for USA Motorsports, which I loved those guys. Absolutely the best promoter, in my opinion, that ever was, that I ever worked for. Just fantastic people. Woody and Dave and Kevin Depew, they were just so amazingly great people to work for. But they actually ended up in the late 90s, well, like 96, 97, I believe even 98, put together a point series that became Motor Madness on TNN. And, you know, Dave and I had been running those shows for years. And so we found out about this point series and thought, cool, man, we may get a chance to run point series. This is going to be awesome. So we get to an event, and Woody called us aside and said, hey, I need guys. And we thought we were in trouble. We thought we did something wrong. So he pulled us aside and he said, hey, I want you to know that everybody at USA Motorsports went to bat and said, we want Lonnie and Dave to run our point series. And he said, we were told you're going to get who you get. And he said, we told them again, we really, me and Dave, to run this point series. We like working with them. They're easy to work with. And they, you know, they just do a good job. They said, you're going to get who we send. So that was very frustrating. They ended up sending Dan Runney and Eric Meager, and neither one of those guys really wanted to run this series. They were really more interested in Penda stuff. I think Eric Meager ended up running a couple events and then complained enough about he didn't really like doing those shows that Eric Tack took over and ran them for the next few years. And I think even Sky Hartley ended up running some of those toward the end. And by that time, I had already got out of the seat and went into the body shop, so it didn't matter at that point anymore. But that was that was the one complaint that I would have against you know, that ever happened to me at Bigfoot is I think that I earned the right to run that series and didn't get a chance to.
And you know, which is I always wanted to know, since you ran a lot with USA, because most of the videos I believe that were out in the mid 90s and even involved the Bigfoot truck was, I believe, at your truck, especially out west. My boss, you know, the Hall brothers, ran USA a lot. Is there any funny stories that you had with doing shows with them or anything like that?
I knew Mark and Tim long back. I actually, one of the first events that I saw them at, they still had Big Boss, and I think they had the tank at that point. And back then the truck didn't run all that great, and they were in the same place that we were. We were just getting started because we were still running a wild thing, and but always got along really, really well with Mark and Tim, and it was like looking in the mirror for Jason and I, because other than the age thing, Mark and I were like the same guy. Just let it roll off our backs, whatever, easy going, just, get in there, work on the truck, get it done, make it happen. And Jason and Tim were the hotheads, So, we could have been, twin brothers by different mothers or something, but, I always respected Mark and Tim a lot, still do to this day. I'm so happy for those guys that they ended up getting the Dodge deal and that they're still out there kicking it and really one of the dominant independent teams out there right now. I don't really remember any.
It's hard pressed to find anybody that doesn't have any kind of respect for the Hall brothers. That team is hands down the nicest and most friendly team that I've ever been around in monster trucks.
Absolutely. We weren't racing still, but we were actually with our current business, Gateway Classic Mustang. We worked closely with Ford, and they wanted us to do some different events, and because we do data capture with them, and so we ended up doing a few of the jamborees with our stuff, doing data capture with Ford. And so I was talking to the Hall brothers, and
I just put it under like bills.
Of course, getting into the RC
Dan
stuff, or I was asking them about the old Executioner truck with the black and white checkers, and they were like, oh yeah, this and that, and then I said, how long did you run the one with the red and white checkers? And they said, we never ran one with red and white checkers. I said, well, I'm pretty sure you did. No, we never had one with red and white checkers. Well, they definitely did.
Whatever.
And I think Cheech knows that.
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of comical that, and I know exactly where they're coming from. You do so many different things that you honestly lose track of everything that you did. No. One of the other things that I really wish I would have done over my career is kept better track of what events I did, what towns I went to, and I didn't. And people will start talking to me about different shows and this and that. Say, well, we went here, and I'm like, I have no memory at all whatsoever of doing that show. But if I see a video or something, and then it'll start coming back to me. But we did it. Gosh, I think I actually did that show with Rob's truck in '91. Is when I drove his truck. So later in '91 is when we went to work with the Wild Thing truck and ended up buying it out. And, ran that truck for almost 2 years before I want to say it was August of '93 when we went to work for Bigfoot, and then all the way up into the last time I drove. Well, I drove for Clear Channel. Actually, crewed for Bobby Z with the stunt truck in 2003, and then drove.
Hot Wheels, was it?
It was High Roller. Drove High Roller.
High Roller. Yeah.
In 2004, and then actually late in 2004, later in 2004, got a call from Bob Trent and said, "Hey, I heard that you weren't all that crazy about going back with Feld." I said, "Yeah, I wasn't that crazy about the trucks. I didn't think they handled nearly as well as anything that I'd ever driven, or the foot trucks that I'd driven." I said they were way down to what we were used to. The rear steering was really, really slow compared to what I was used to, and I said, where it really kind of the nail in the coffin for me was when we took the two trucks out to the World Finals that year to use as mine was going to be used as a backup for Tony Farrell and Blue Thunder, and obviously Dennis was going to use Jason's as a backup if he needed it. And so we got out there, and a bunch of the teams kind of started giving us grief, and we're like, "What did we do wrong?" And they're like, "You guys didn't tear enough stuff up." What? You guys didn't tear enough stuff up? And I'm like, "Well, I thought that was the name of the game. You do, win the event or win the race and win freestyle and be able to drive your truck back in the trailer in one piece. I thought that was the name of the game." "Oh no, man. If you guys didn't tear enough stuff up, then they're going to take money away from us because we don't need that much money because we didn't spend all that." So I thought, this is not the kind of team that I really want to be working for. So anyway, Bob called me later that year and said, "Hey, I've got a show that I need you to, if you'd be willing to go do this show." And he said, "I'll, take number 11 and go to do this deal down in Florida." And so called a friend of ours, and he went with me, and we went and did it. Well, actually, no, I take that back. The first show he asked me to do was New Jersey, the drag strip up there in New Jersey. And so I went up there and did that. And you had the choice of doing wheelies or doing donuts, and I chose to do donuts. And I'll never forget, Porter looked at me and go, "What are you doing donuts for? Bigfoot trucks are known for doing wheelies." And I don't know how to do a slap wheelie. Well, I never did that before. So when Trent called me and asked me to do this show down in Florida, I walked upstairs and walked into Eric Neger's office and said, "All right, now how do I do a slap wheelie?" And so he kind of went over that with me, and I almost got it on my first attempt, and the second attempt I got it, and from that point on, I could do it whenever I wanted to, and thought that was one of the coolest things that I'd ever done in a monster truck. So then Trent called me again and said, "Hey, would you want to run first quarter?" And I said, "Man, I would love to do it, but," I said, "we're getting busier and busier at the shop here, and I just don't know that I have time." And he said, "Well, here's what I'm proposing. You come get in the truck whenever we're ready to pull out." He said, "I will have your crew guy and a driver." He said, "If you don't want to drive the semi, you don't even have to drive the semi. All you got to do is come climb in the truck, go do the show. As soon as you guys pull back in the parking lot, you go home. We'll take care of the truck. We'll take care of the trailer. You do." So, basically I was a fly-in driver that rode in the semi. And so I said, "Well, heck yeah, I'll do that, man." And I did that, and that was probably the most fun I ever had in my entire career was that one first quarter. And Keith Sturgeon was crewing for me pretty much all those shows, and we just had a great time, and it was a lot of fun.
When was actually the last time you drove a monster truck or raced in competition?
So then the first quarter of 2005. And as fate would have it, the last show that I did, the big man crewed for me. Always loved going on the road with Lurch. He was just an amazing guy. So many stories. The gentle giant. Never met anybody that he didn't, just he would talk to anybody. Just absolutely love that guy, and I'm so
Tim,
we'll never be able to replace him, and I can't believe he's gone.
Tim Hall told me a little story which was funny. Him and Lurch was at a Waffle House after a USA show, and they were standing there, and Lurch goes to the lady, "I'm here to pick up my check." And above the cash register it says, "Please pay checks here." And then the way the sign says, "Pay checks here." So Lurch goes to the lady and says, "I want my paycheck."
So I have a couple of Lurch stories. So Dave Lurch was crewing for us, and we were actually doing West Lebanon, New York. Rained really hard that night. Just sloppy mud everywhere. And a couple of nights later, we had to go down to, I think we were in West Virginia or something for a deal show. And it rained down there too, and the trucks were just covered in mud. So we get up and head over to the track to clean the trucks up. And, Ron's already there. And we come around the corner, and there's like 3 little kids cleaning the trucks. And we're like, dude, why are they washing the trucks? He's like, hey, I paid them to clean the trucks. I didn't want to do it, so I paid these guys to clean the trucks.
Oh, God, that's awesome.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
So, yeah, he paid some kids to clean the trucks for us that day. Yeah.
That is
Kind of like Tom Sawyer and the Fence.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to do it, so I paid the kids to do it. That's funny.
Yeah.
I remember back before Trigger King actually started, we had a Bigfoot open house where we actually had a little, it was kind of like just a small little J course that we'd set up out there to run. And I was the first guy there. Unloaded all my stuff and kind of sat off into the corner. And Lurch just kind of walks over and he just starts talking to me. One of the nicest conversations I ever had with somebody. And we're just sitting there BSing, and he's asking me about my trucks and stuff, giving me crap for having a Gravedigger truck at a Bigfoot show. Just a fun conversation. The only guy from Bigfoot that actually came over and talked to us that day, other than guys that I sought out to talk to.
Right.
Like, it made me feel good. He sought out to talk to me.
Exactly. I don't think that there's only one Ron Bachman, and you'll never be able to replace him. He's just an all-around great guy.
Very true. Very well missed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome, though.
I remember
I was about to say, that's awesome that Bigfoot has his portrait up and all the trucks have Ron Bachman on it. I think that's so awesome.
That is.
That tells you how much that guy meant to them, because he was an everyman, and I think that identified with a lot of people. I actually have a customer that's a former truck driver at my current location where I work at a rent-a-center, and he tells me Ron Bachman stories. And all he was an over-the-road truck driver, and he was sad when he heard about it. And I'm like, how did you know Ron Bachman? He's like, dude, I've met him at like 6 or 7 different truck stops along the way. He talked with everybody.
Well, let me tell you something. When Ron had a week off and somebody had to take his truck and go do a display, you're driving down the interstate, and guys that key up, hey, Big Ron, and Ron's not in. Well, what are you doing in his truck? I mean, they were ready to come kick my ass because I'm driving Ron's truck, and where the hell's Ron?
You're not Ron.
Yeah, and I talked to several of the other guys. When Ron needed time off or something, somebody else would fill in for him, and everybody would come back with the same story. I asked, 10 truckers wanted to kick my ass because where's Ron and why are you in his truck?
All right, let's get on to some current stuff that you got going on right now, Lonnie. You guys are obviously at Gateway Classic Mustang restoring Bigfoot number 4. # make 4 great again. You're welcome, Rick Fred. I want to point out too, you guys have built some pretty famous people, some pretty famous cars. Sammy Hagar. You built a car for Auto Trader. The biggest one that jumped out to me was, and if people don't know who Chad McQueen is, if you remember Steve McQueen from the movie Bullet, that's his son. If anybody's going to endorse a McQueen can do it. So if that says anything about Gateway Classic Mustang and what they got going on over there.
Yeah, that's we were actually, as I mentioned, we traded a Mustang to buy the Wild Thing truck, and so I'd been trying to convince my dad before we got into monster trucks that the Mustang world, I thought we could probably make some money restoring cars and selling parts and things of that nature, way back in the late 80s and early 90s. And so when I left the monster truck world and went back into Mustangs, I never expected where we've gone to, and I still feel like we've got places to go and things that we want to do. But a lot of hard work and just trying to be a leader in the industry, and everything that we learned in the monster truck industry has translated into the Mustang world for us, especially now that we do the pro touring style stuff. And we actually have a sister company called Gateway Performance Suspension, and we actually build and design and sell suspension products for vintage Mustangs and 04 to 14 Mustangs we have parts for. And we've recently come full circle and have suspension for 65 to 73 F100s. Actually, 65 to 79 F100s. So I actually a few years ago built myself a 69 F100 and basically kind of developed my own suspension products. And as we were putting the truck together, I told Jason, I'm like, man, I've kind of been watching this Ford truck market, and it's really kind of taken off. We probably really ought to think about taking these parts into production. So that's what we did, and we actually were proud to announce we have now officially released those products, and they're ready for sale. And through our career, a car for Sammy Hagar, who I've been a fan of since I was in high school, and that led us to actually we went on tour with him and Michael Anthony, former bass player of Van Halen and now in Sammy's band, The Circle. He was on that tour with Sammy and came out and looked at the car. And actually, when they were in St. Louis, he came down to the shop and checked out Sam's car when it was still down there. So that ended up leading us to doing some restoration work on his wife's 69 GT500 convertible. Then these shows were all being taped for Hot Rod TV, and that actually led us to be able to do the Bullet Mustang for Chad McQueen, which was really, probably the most iconic Mustang on the planet. So we were able to do that, and we actually did it before Gas Monkey did it. Not to say that they didn't do a good job, but we built Chad a modern version that looked like an old version, but it had all of our modern suspension on it, and 5-speed transmission, air conditioning, tilt wheel, and all that stuff. And Chad really, really, really enjoyed that car. Drove it quite a lot before he ended up selling it and using the money for the charity that he works with. But then we got to do a car. One of our favorite cars that we did was for the Darrell Gwynn Foundation. And what we did was, at the time we were doing that car, David Pearson was going into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and the Wood brothers were celebrating, I believe, 50 years of NASCAR. And so we ended up building a street legal replica of the 76 Daytona 500 winning car. And at that time, when real men raced in NASCAR, the Pearson and Richard Petty were ahead of the field far enough that they had a crash. They crashed together on the last lap and still managed to get both cars across the line to finish first and second. They were that far ahead of the field.
1979 Daytona 500.
1976 Daytona 500.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right.
79 I believe, was the first televised.
Yeah, 79. Yeah, 79 was the fight. I've got those 2 years confused. My bad. But yeah, I can't believe I forgot. As much of a NASCAR fan as I am, I can't believe I forgot you guys did that.
We actually got the privilege of meeting Leonard Wood and Richard Petty, and one of the coolest days in our lives was when we pulled the cover back on that car, and after the TV cameras got sat down and all the press was kind of done, Leonard and Richard, but mostly Leonard, walked around that car, and Leonard started putting his hands on things, and just you could see the memories flooding back in his face. And it was just such a proud moment for us. And then to really put goosebumps on your arms, he really hadn't put together the fact that all these anniversary dates were coming up. The anniversary of the Daytona, the anniversary of how many years they've been in NASCAR, and Pearson going into the Hall of Fame. So when he got back to the shop after that trip, he said, "Boys, I think we need to paint the car back like it was in '76." And guess what happened? They painted the car and went to the Daytona 500 the next year and won.
With Trevor Bayne?
With Trevor Bayne.
Yeah.
They called us from the racetrack and said, "We painted the car and we won." So to know that we were in the minutest sense a part of that victory, because what we did, what Darrell Gwynn did, inspired them to paint that car, and then they won that race, was just that was a huge moment for us.
And
it doesn't get any bigger than stock car auto racing.
Exactly.
And it was pretty cool that you do all the Mustangs and the refurbished cars too, but you're still into the little bit of the monster truck side of it, but in a smaller scale. And you race against both me and Josh. Well, Josh is probably the better out of all the three of us, but it doesn't matter. We all have fun, and it's pretty cool that we all race that 1 month on a Sunday and talk about your your RC kick. And the pretty cool thing is, I believe all the RC trucks that you run somewhat have a tie with you.
There's only one that doesn't, and you're 100% right there. And what maybe you guys don't even realize is that the money that I earned driving Rob Push's First Blood, which I didn't earn a lot because I was paying for all the expenses while I was out there, and the fuel and all that stuff. I paid for all that stuff, but I did make a little bit of money. And as soon as I got home, I went to a hobby shop and bought a Clodbuster with the money that I earned driving First Blood.
That's awesome.
That's what I did. And so, I've been into them for a long time. And then actually, while I was working for Bigfoot, got hooked up with a guy named Randy, and I cannot for the life of me remember his last name, but he built the Featherlight RC chassis. And we got to know him and Dave Stevens, who Dave was the one that helped me in the body shop there at Bigfoot for a while. Got to know those guys, and they ended up sending me and Jason a Featherlight chassis apiece. And so that's, let me back up just a little bit. My first ever aftermarket chassis was a Sassy chassis that Mike White now owns. That's another one of the guys that runs with us in the club. And I got that Sassy chassis from Gene Patterson, who still has an RC Claude.
J Concepts was him a while back. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it was presented to him at the Monster Truck Hall of Fame a few years back. And so Gene took it out and made about 3 passes and broke it.
Sounds about right. The real question is, did he hit a shed?
He did not hit a shed. There wasn't one to be had. But so that's kind of how we got into the to the race side of the trucks. But through a bunch of different things happening, I started building my own chassis in the 90s and built and sold a ton of my own chassis. And Jason and I, anytime we went on the road, we would try to find local hobby shops out there. And we bought, a lot of used Clodbusters because, guys were using them for pull trucks more so than monster trucks back then. We bought a bunch of them at hobby shops, and we would take those home, strip them down, and build rollers. And I was building rollers with a radio, and you get one battery and a truck and a radio for, I could sell them for $600, $700, and I was selling those as fast as I could build them.
So wait a minute, you're telling me that you guys were out there building those trucks? That's why I couldn't get any in my area in the '90s. Y'all were stealing them from me.
Yeah, we were building them and selling them, but most of the donor trucks came from other states. And we would take them on the road with us and play with them at the shows and this and that, and we just had a lot of fun. And then we actually ended up getting several of the guys around the house involved in them. One of them being Bobby Chandler, and we actually used to race in the basement of Jason's apartment. And
I've seen a couple.
We would do straight line racing and turn course racing like we used to do in the USA days. And Bob Chandler actually helped us design a timing equipment that we used on our straight line racing that was really pretty sophisticated, and we just had a hell of a lot of fun. What's irritating to me right now is I'm not as good as I used to be, and I won all of those point series that we used to run back then. I was the king. Nobody beat me. I won every point season that we had.
What happened?
Old age, I guess. Old age, and the trucks have gotten a lot faster.
My first memory of Lonnie was at a Bigfoot open house, and I can remember we were doing RCs on one side of over towards where the car crushes were going on. We had an RC thing going on, and I just happened to walk up front, and I look up front, and then Lonnie and Jason are running their trucks on the other side where they had previously done some car crushing stuff in the past few years. So I was like, I'm going to go get one of my trucks, and I'm going to run with these guys for a bit. And I come over there, I started running, and I could hear in like my peripheral hearing Jason going, "That's not a clodbuster." And then I kind of drove it a little bit closer. "That is a clodbuster." And that struck up the conversation. And
yep.
It's awesome to think that how the Bigfoot Open House, as it's evolved, so has Trigger King through Bigfoot, and how strong that relationship is with everybody there. It's the best club that I've ever raced in, period. And I've raced in a few. Best club I've ever been in, hands down, because everybody there isn't a hobby guy. They're monster truck guys. They know how monster truck events should be ran.
Right. Yeah, and I just got to get you guys to quit putting the open house on the week that we're in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, because I haven't got to come to the last few open houses.
Yeah, we missed you there this year.
I was about to say.
And when I.
Oh, sorry. I was about to say. Trigger King's is my first and probably only club that I'll probably be joining. I don't know. I like the camaraderie, and I like how, like Josh says, everyone is a monster truck person. Doesn't matter if you're a fan or you go all the way up to working on them or have even driven them. We're all together as one, and I always like that.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not guys that are there thinking, why are you guys messing with monster trucks? Or I remember we used to in the '90s we would go to like find a local dirt track and go run our trucks, and guys were there with gas cars and just like turning their nose up at us that why are you here with those useless piece of crap trucks? And we would run for hours while they were tuning their gas cars, and they would make 3 or 4 passes. And when we started making passes with our trucks, and they saw that they actually landed and worked, and they would be like, then they would start asking questions. And it was back then it was, why were you messing with that crap? Those aren't real RC trucks. And now it's different. It's a lot different. And with the support of that J Concepts has given us over the past few years, with all the cool stuff that they're coming out with, and even some of the other manufacturers out there that are coming out with the cool solid axle stuff, you know, there's guys out there that have independent monster trucks, but in my opinion, that's not a monster truck. We are trying to replicate the real deal. And there's not a successful independent monster truck in the world at this point.
There's one out there, but it's not very competitive.
It sucks.
It moves. We'll put it that way. It's a moving paperweight.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm sorry if that insults the guy that built it. There's a lot of ingenuity that goes into that. But if it's wider than a crush car, it's not going to do very good at a monster truck show.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that someday down the road that we might not have a successful, independent truck. And if somebody ever pulls it off, it's probably going to be incredible, and it'll probably run circles around the solid axle trucks, because that's the world that we're moving into in the Mustang world, where in 2015 the Mustang came out with independent rear suspension, and it's fantastic. And they had it a few years earlier in the Cobra Mustangs, but took it out and put a live axle in the rear. But now technology has caught up with the horsepower, and the independent rear suspension in the new Mustangs is just phenomenal.
Would that be the Mustang?
Yeah, 2015 to current Mustang has independent rear suspension, and it's just they're putting more horsepower down. They're getting ready to introduce the new Mustang GT the GT500 that will be out in 2020, and it's over 700 horsepower from the factory, which is it's just a beast.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an amazing car.
Like I said, I also like to thank Lonnie for half the electronic stuff that my truck has. My Raminator truck has half the stuff that I bought from him, because he went to another company. But thanks. But
hey, I'm happy to
I've still got to have him. I still got to have him cut me one of his Claude chassis. I would love to have one of those. It's because Lonnie's trucks, to me, represent the Penda style setup better than any truck I've seen, period, out there. The rear and the front suspension just drops. It just looks so cool.
Well, I do have some of those cut, so we'll definitely have to get together on that.
Exactly.
I was wondering why.
And that's.
I was about to say, I was always wondering why about the snake bite. When you always take one good hit, the sway bars always go back on you.
It's old, and I need to go back through it and fix a few things on it. But with the time that I have, that we put in at the shop, and we do 15 or 20 events a year, where we go out on the road, there's just times that I just don't want to mess with it, and it works pretty darn good. And I think probably what you're talking about more so than the sway bars is every now and then it'll take a hit, and it will actually pop the it'll pop the cantilever over a little bit and wedge the shock.
Oh, okay.
And that's probably just that the bump stops that are in the shocks are getting a little softer than they were when it was originally put together, and it's allowing it just that half a millimeter more travel than it should, and makes it pop over.
Put some of those J Concepts bump stops in there, you'll be good as gold.
Right. But no, I really appreciate the compliment on the way that the trucks handle. That's to me, to make the trucks handle is more important to me than winning. If my trucks take a big hit and land real soft and don't get a bunch of recoil and bounce and stuff like that, to me that's cooler than actually being able to win the race. But hopefully one of these days I'll get a little better at driving again and have some time to get some practice in and get all this new stuff that Jason and I have got. We've actually gotten Kickin picked us up as team drivers.
I was about to say, you guys got picked up by Kickin, and that's a big RC company right there as far as electronics goes. I just switched over to all their servos as of last year, and I love them. Yeah,
and there's just so much that the technology is so far ahead of us that we really are trying to get it all figured out. And I think once we get it really all dialed in, and if we actually get some time, Jason and I have both been talking about, we really need to set some time aside and get some practice time in. It's just that realistically at this point of our lives, we dust the trucks off, go to the event, and we drive once a month.
Just to have fun.
You know, we don't have any.
Exactly. That's what it's about.
You can't be as good as you guys are without driving more than we do.
I've been practicing with mine stuff, and I mean, I like how I got hooked up with secondhand gear. You know, some of the stuff that you guys are selling to you know us guys, they're still good parts. They're still decent parts and competitive parts. You know, that Raminator truck of mine is the chassis a TT Pro. I mean, they haven't made that for almost 10 years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and every only new parts that I think I have on that truck is technically the 4-link on it, but everything else is in the Power Strokes. But everything else has been bought by someone else, and I'm enjoying it. I have a competitive truck. It's a good freestyle truck. I just need to drive it better.
I feel the same way, brother.
His first event, he goes out and nails a double backflip, and I'm sitting in the pits going, "Where the hell did he learn that?"
Yeah. It was an accident. I even told him. I was like, I wanted to do a backflip, and instead I did 2. And then outside that, I land on the bumper, and I did a wheelie.
Blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then, right?
Exactly.
I was lucky. And then, I placed in the next freestyle run that we ran. I think you guys had to leave earlier. I think I placed 6th, so that's still good. It's just, like you said, I now know how to control the acceleration now on that truck with the controller, so I can down it a little bit. So, I mean, I have been practicing a little bit in my parking lot and also in the garage of my house. Just to handle that truck. I found out with Rambo, though, I like hitting walls, and I don't mean to. That truck's so unpredictable. I can go and I hit it, the truck lands good. I hit it again, truck goes left, wall. I'm like, what the hell just happened? And
walls, pedestrians, just Rambo.
Pedestrians, walls, you name it, Rambo's probably going to take care of it. And, it's the only truck I know that I can hit the first jump and roll over. And I'm still trying to figure out what happened. Like,
hey, don't think you have that market cornered, buddy. I've been there too.
Yeah. But the sway bar system
Yeah, look at some of my old racing videos and you'll wonder how I still have trucks.
One of our recent races, I think both of my Pro Mod trucks, with Bounty Hunter, I hit the throttle in it, did a backflip and landed on its roof off the first ramp, and so I tried to take it a little bit easier with Mutant, and took off and it nosed over and rolled over on its roof.
Yeah, I remember
First
that.
hit on both. Yeah.
That was the bracket I won with a broken truck.
I tell you what, Josh, between you and Bobby Chandler, the stuff that you guys can do with those Pro Mod trucks is just beyond me. I don't know how you guys can have that much control over those trucks. It baffles me.
About 90% luck, 10% skill.
I tell you what, when I had that setup that you have now, Cheech, I had a chaos. Every time I ran that truck, I had to replace gears in it because I couldn't keep gears in it. I was breaking 4-link, the rod ends on the 4-links left and right, and after about 2 years of it, 2-3 years of it, I think I just said, you know what, I'm and I actually didn't even have a Pro Mod truck for I think almost a whole season.
Yeah, the truck ran.
Yeah, you've got pretty good ones right now.
What is it?
So he's got 2 pretty good ones right now. He gets that Freestyle RC Mutant truck dialed in. That's going to be a pretty good little truck to run. Got to get the steering dialed in on that thing, and then I think you're good to go.
Also, you need to get a hold of
It's
Jonathan
just getting
Arnold.
used to.
Lonnie, you need to get a hold of Jonathan Arnold, by the way.
Okay.
I got him some artwork on a certain truck in Maryland.
Awesome.
Yes, awesome.
That's actually why the mutant body is on that truck, because he was going to have that other body done for me for like 3 years now.
Well, in 3
Plus it's
weeks
art.
you may get it. But
Awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome. I just messaged the guy. I messaged the guy behind it. I was like, hey, I'm gonna make a RC body. All right, here's the file. All right, send it to Jonathan, and he's trying to work some magic where he will be the provider. So if anyone else wants to, get that truck, they gotta go through him. So
He's got
Well,
some
I actually
stuff
know
for
that the guy who,
stuff.
when we approached him about doing that body a few years ago, we were told, yeah, do it, and while you're at it, can you build me a truck too?
That's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, that's what's cool about this thing is, it's pretty much everybody in the real monster truck industry is just as interested in the RC stuff as we are in the real stuff.
Exactly. That's what makes it cool. And this is an argument that I get every now and then with some certain people, because around my area, it's dirt track or nothing. There's all kinds of dirt oval speedways to go run at, and I would love to be the intermission act, because more people would walk around and stare at the intermission show of a monster truck than they would the damn dirt track racing.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I've had it happen before at some of these. There was one year I tried to really get into it out here locally, and I brought my monster trucks and I'd run them at intermission, and the whole crowd would be gathered around the speedway, and have like the A main. All right, we're going to the A main. There'd be 5 people standing there.
That's awesome.
It's I just like oh man, I'm speechless, but I get excited about it because I always have ideas. I'm gonna purchase Josh's truck here pretty soon to make another pro mod, but and then I got some stuff for Chris to make another outlaw truck. I'm gonna try to enter the outlaw world with Chris Blank helping me out, but I think that's his last name, right?
Chris Blank, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Good. Because I didn't know if I.
He's pretty blank.
Yeah.
I did that at Pop Lonnie.
I definitely can hear it now because you and Chris both have some freaking. You guys have some off the wall conversations between you two. You guys can compliment and insult each other in one sentence.
We usually do.
just get the hate out.
There's nothing better than that, though.
Right. If you can insult and compliment someone at the same time, you're good. You're good.
That's right. Right. And if you can both laugh about it, it's even better.
Exactly.
Right. So, the bright side is I have the weekend of the next Sugar King off. So.
There you go.
Awesome. So do we.
We were supposed to do the Pacific Missouri car crash. St. David St. Clair. I think that's the dealership. Over there right next to the Bigfoot shop, and the guy postponed it again, so. I was going to be in the St. Louis area anyway. I was going to let you guys, I was going to let everyone know that we're going to be a car crash, so you guys are more welcome to hang out with us, but, they postponed it, so I'm going to be there Friday. I think I'm going to hang out with John, and I don't know, what do you guys, are you guys open on a Saturday also, or?
If we're in town, a lot of times I'll just be there tinkering with my own stuff or something like that. If you guys want to come out, just give me a heads up, and we'll meet over there, and I'll give you a tour of the place.
I want to come too.
Well,
Josh, you're more than welcome.
Yep. I'm actually thinking about that. I mean, I'll be in St. Louis, that area, the whole weekend, even on Sunday when we, do our show. And I would love to see that. That'd be cool. I get since hopefully don't forget listen to your voicemail on your shop phone.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Will do.
Since you gave me the wrong number.
I might have accidentally screamed into the phone. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I kept on dialing. I was like, I'm getting nothing. And then you're like, shit.
No, actually, that's not my shop phone number or my personal number. I gave you the first half was my cell phone number, and the last 4 digits was the shop number. I blended them. So you're going to be yelling at somebody that has no idea who you are.
Nice.
That's happened before as well, so.
All right, John. But yeah, I'll be there that weekend, so I definitely will get a hold of you. I mean, even though I'm working for Chrysler, I'm still I like the Mustangs. So here's a question, Lonnie. Did you ever get a chance to touch like a Ford GT or a GT40 or any of the special unique Ford cars that they have?
Well, actually, I have not ridden in a GT40 of any version. Last year, we do an event in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and one of the guys that was actually one of the engineers on the GT40 had one at that event and gave everybody on our crew a ride except for Jason and I. By the time he got around to us, he'd broken something on the car or had a tire that was worn out or something. But anyway, Jason and I didn't get to ride, and everybody else did, which was kind of a bummer. But we actually, right now, as we speak, are hauling a 2019 Bullet Edition Mustang. That is one of the specialty limited production cars. We've gotten the opportunity to drive the GT350 Rs and just some of the other GT350s, which are just amazing cars, and can't wait to get to drive one of the GT500s because it's basically everything that the 350 is and about 300 more horse. So I'm really excited to get to do that. So we do get to talk. We get to hear about things that are coming a little bit sooner than the general public, and we get to typically get our hands on them. We actually this year Ford is coming out with a new Pocket Rocket hot rod that I had my doubts about, but they let us drive it at Carlisle, Pennsylvania at the All Ford show, and we drove it again at the Tulsa event. The Carlisle event we did autocross with the car, and at the Tulsa event we did a road course. And what they've done is they've taken the Focus RS engine, which is a pretty hot engine, 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, put in the Mustang. They're calling this the High Performance 2.3. So this is a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that's 330 horsepower, 350 foot-pounds of torque.
Out of a 4-cylinder?
Out of a 4-cylinder.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can also get the performance package, which is offered on the GT Mustang, which is bigger brakes, better wheels and tires, better suspension, and you can also get the MagneRide, which is basically magnetic controlled shock absorbers that are controlled by a computer that changes the shock damping in nanoseconds. So you can get everything that you can get on the high performance GT Mustang and the GT350 and the GT500 on this 2.3 liter 330 horsepower car that, by the way, comes in at $1,000. This thing is just a ton of fun to drive. Like doing autocross or road course stuff, especially in the autocross. the car is 300 pounds lighter on the nose, which is huge if you want to make a car turn. So a really, really competitive car on the autocross, and lacks a little bit of speed on a long straightaway on a road course. However, you can go into the turns much, much deeper and faster through the turns, again, because the car is so much lighter. So that's going to be coming out in 2020. And, for somebody to get into an entry-level performance car that they can just go have a hell of a lot of fun with, insurance will be relatively cheap, and like I say, the van price is just under $30,000. I think they're going to sell a hell of a lot of these cars.
I think it's pretty cool that so the Gateway Mustangs are you guys are like licensed through Ford to do products for them?
We don't have any Ford license. We don't build any products that are actually for licensable products, really. So basically, to be a licensed part is if you're reproducing a part. We are actually building suspension components that are upgrades that were never available back then. So we're using basically modern technology on the old vintage cars, and we were the first company to ever put the 5-liter Coyote that's been in the Mustang since 2011. We were the first company to ever put that in a vintage Mustang, and we have an entire installation kit that you can get through us that has all the parts to put that engine in those cars. And basically what it's doing is it's giving you 400 horse at the rear tires with an engine that realistically you can get 26, 27 miles of the gallon on the highway with, but take it on a road course or an autocross track or a drag strip and be extremely competitive. But be in a vintage car that looks cool, which is, in my opinion, the ultimate goal. Everybody wants the cars that they had or wanted or desired as a teenager or kid that you had to get rid of because of you never could afford or whatever. Now we can build it, but put all today's technology in it, and just have the best of both worlds.
That's pretty cool.
That's all you can ask for now.
Because with me working with Hall Brothers and the Ram group, we get all the insights of upcoming trucks and stuff like that, and cars, and it's pretty cool getting feedback from them about seeing the Red Line and the Gladiator before it came out, and I don't know, I get a giggle when I see upcoming vehicles and stuff like that, and I bet you do feel the same way too with upcoming Mustangs and etc.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool to be to work as closely as we do with Ford, and the group that we work with is basically the Ford Performance guys, and the our direct contact with Ford is the guy that's basically in charge of all the cool cars. He's in charge of all the what they call the Ford Performance cars, which used to be the SVO. So it's the GT500, the GT350, this new high performance 2.3, the Raptor, the RS, the ST, all those, all the fun cars, all the performance cars. That's the guy who we basically report to at Ford. So, we kind of get a little bit of heads up on what's coming up, and we definitely get to drive those cars and see what they're like, because basically at the end of the day, we're out there to talk to people and let them know what our opinions are of these cars to try to get them to go buy one.
Yeah, it was pretty cool also hearing you say that when you were with Bigfoot, you guys did the iPad, well, not iPads, but the paperwork of getting people to sign up to get more information about the vehicles, because we do the same thing still, but instead of paperwork we use iPads, and you could enter your name, and you get into a free drawing to win $70,000 to any FCA vehicle, and we go ahead and go from there. And I thought it was pretty cool hearing you talk about how Bigfoot was like that too. So that's probably the platform that we used.
Yeah, Stu.
Hey, I signed up for one of those about a year ago when Mark was in town. Tell him I'm still waiting on the check.
It's over. It was 2
Yeah,
years
see,
ago. Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
we
It was
still,
already over with.
I don't care. I still
We'll
want the check.
sign up. We'll sign up again. You can get your $70,000. Give me your
Okay, cool.
email.
That parts
Give me your email, and we can sign you up.
10-4.
You just have to wait until
yeah, we
December
do that
31st.
today with Ford. We do data capture for Ford right now, and when we go out, we go out and do events that Ford can't send their rig to or what have you, and we do data capture, and then basically they can track their sales back to if somebody signed one of those data captures, who it was that they signed up with, and basically so then we get credit for if let's just say Josh signed my data capture survey and then went and bought a new Ford vehicle, they can trace it back and know that he signed my deal, so then I get credit for that sale.
Yeah, it's the
So
same.
it's pretty cool.
Same way.
We also work with BF Goodrich. We do data capture for those guys as well. That was really our first major partner. We've been partners with them for about 15 years now, and great tires, great people to work with, and they've supported us for a long time, and we really appreciate that. We work with Recaro Seats and Miller Welders. Some pretty cool stuff out there.
I'm surprised none of these sponsors that
do a
you
lot of
have
cool
right now, all these sponsors that you're naming, could help you build a monster truck. Just saying.
Well, unfortunately, Goodrich and Michelin, neither one of those guys build tires. Miller will definitely be helping us build them as much as we'll be using their equipment to when we start welding on this thing. And Exalta has already said that they would work with us on the paint product. So.
Well, here's a little fact. In the backyard in Tim's shop, there is a set of 4 Michelin Big X monster truck tires. Just saying.
Really?
Yeah. Right now, freaking Kohler's licking his lips right now for him.
I'll be dang.
They were used.
I watched not that long ago. I was watching some old Penda stuff, and BF Goodrich actually sponsored a bunch of those Penda races.
Yeah, it's just funny because BF Goodrich and even General Tire, they don't make a monster truck tire, but they sponsored that Thunder Jags.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Everybody that came to that event, and even guys that own monster trucks have personal vehicles too, and even a lot of those transporters, Goodrich and Michelin make tires for, and I'm sure General Tire too, make tires for those big rigs, not to mention all the personal vehicles that are, so it makes sense.
Rolling advertisement.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, for us, it's we're product sponsored by Firestone. Well, Bigfoot's actually sponsored by Firestone, but we're getting close to a deal with. We're trying to do some displays for the General Tire truck because we have the General Tire truck this year for the 4-wheel drive jamborees. But I don't even think we're product sponsored anymore. So, product sponsored by Firestone anymore, but we'll still run them. We'll still white wall the hell out of them.
Well, I can tell you, as a guy that ran on both Goodyears and Firestones, the Firestones were far superior tire, and I'll guarantee you they're far superior to anything that the company trucks are running.
That's one thing I could never figure as far as the company trucks now with all the BKT buzz that's going on over there. I don't know why Monster Jam just didn't approach Firestone. They've built a purpose-built monster truck tire for a very long time.
Yes, they did. I'm sure it all had to do with dollars and cents. I mean, who knows? They may have approached Firestone, and I could imagine that Firestone is loyal to Bigfoot. They've been together for a long time.
Very true. That could have been another reason why, is they were like, "Oh, you going Bigfoot? No, we're going to back away now."
Yeah.
But I mean, that's
hard to say.
Right. It's also cool that what you're doing, you're still involved, and is there any type of social media that you guys have that people can follow?
Absolutely. We've got Gateway Mustang on Facebook and Twitter, and we also have a YouTube channel. We'd love for people to. We're trying to build that YouTube channel, so we'd love for people to go subscribe to that. We're actually starting to use it more and more. We actually just put a pretty cool little video on there earlier this week. Go check that out.
All right, that's pretty cool. And also, your episode's going to be on YouTube here with this podcast that we're doing, because we're also going to be on YouTube. Josh and Jason
Awesome.
will still be with me during the Kickin' Old School, but I'll still deliver some original content with our other program with the podcast. So I'm excited about that also. And Josh, is there any social media that people can follow you on?
Josh Rhodes RC Racing on Facebook and Josh Dig Rhodes on Instagram. Post content just about every chance I can get on both of those sites. So if you guys want to follow me, I'd be more than welcome to help you on any builds that you got going on. Also, if you just want to see cool pictures of trucks flying in the air, I'm your guy.
Can you teach me to drive?
You know, no, your brother maybe. One of these days, Lonnie, I need to come out to your shop one of these days and just bring my trucks, and we can just all have a bash session or something.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
All right, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, come on.
All right, well, I want to thank you, Lonnie, for being on here. I think it's awesome that you took your time to let us fans interview you, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Sounds good, man. Thanks, guys, thank you for having me on, and it makes me feel good that maybe I was a little bit relevant in my time.
You were, especially the history that you have.
More than relevant.
Well, thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
No problem. All right, guys, that was Lonnie Charteris, driver of the many faces of monster trucks, from First Blood all the way to Bigfoot. If you guys ever want to, if you're around the area when you come hear this episode, they do RC racing around the St. Louis area. You're more than welcome to stop on and take a look. Also, this episode will be, like I said, we'll have YouTube footage with the Spotify and Google Play and iTunes. So if you have a difficulty going onto those sites for listening to content, you can just go, Crush This MT for all the up to date episodes. We'll maybe go later down the road and bring previous episodes, but as of right now, we're going to be doing some new ones. So be on the lookout also with a little bit of Josh and all of them too with the Kickin' Old School.